So good evening, everyone. My name is Shakwana Baba, and I will be your moderator for this session. We are joined again tonight by Mr. Bell, the same insightful presenter we had on Tuesday. But this evening, he will be leading us through a very important topic of soil health and management. Just a few housekeeping just before we start. If you do have a question, you can place it in the chat or utilize the Q&A box that's on the screen below. And I'll be happy to read those questions out. And during the Q&A segment, a feedback survey will appear on your screen. Please take a moment to complete it while it's available. Once the survey is closed, it cannot be reopened. So please, I ensure that each and every one of you completed that survey. So thank you so much for your attention, and let's welcome Mr. Bell as he begins his session tonight. Over to you, Mr. Bell.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. As our able moderator said, my name is Lindbergh Bell. I presently work for the Ministry of Education here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I am the manager of the government school farm. A bit for my academics. I did my studies first in Venezuela. In Mexico, I continued my studies into the Republic of China and Taiwan. I have been working and teaching and farming for over 30 years, particularly in cucurbit crops. Crops are more pumpkins, squash, watermelons, sun melons, and so forth. But as of the last maybe 10, 15 years or so, I have sought to get some training, and I'm now into production of broilers, layers, and poultry. What I've sought to do is to kind of diversify myself a bit. The topics that we have at hand today, soil health and management, is one that I think is very important. And it is that for those persons who are actually in farming or thinking about going into farming, you know for sure if your soil is not healthy, then your productivity will be very low. So this evening we'll be looking at soil health and management, exploring techniques for maintaining and improving soil health, understanding soil composition, and implementing the best practice to ensure that we have the best possible soil to plant our crops. What I'm going to seek to do is to give you as much information as I can that will assist you in ensuring that when you now go back into your work, that you will see or you'll be equipped enough to have some information where you can either prevent your soil from becoming depleted, keeping your soil healthier, and managing the health of your soil. That's what we're looking at today. We're just going to be going through a few slides, and you'll see them as we go along. We will have some time, we will have some question and answer sections, so we'll pause maybe halfway through the presentation. We can have some questions then, and we go to the latter part, and we'll have some other questions as your moderators mentioned already. When we're looking at soil health, one of the most important aspects of soil health is to ensure that this soil can be used or can sustain the productivity or the production that we want for today, and also for our farmers for the tomorrows, for our children and all the generations that are coming forward. So the health of the soil is absolutely imperative. When we look at the soil health, in particularly first, we look at a healthy soil is essential as part of our food security. We have a growing population, a growing world population, and we need to ensure that the soil that we have can support the food and the nutrition need for that population coming. So we look at here, we say healthy soil supports the growth of crops, enabling the production of sufficient food to meet the human need. Without a robust soil health, agricultural yields may decline, threatening global food security. Now, some persons looking at this may say, but we do have production where we have hydroponics, aeroponics, and so forth. But even with hydroponics and aeroponics, all of these different methods of production, they still sit on soil. Whether it is arable soil that we're using or just soil to rest, the different implements or the buildings, whatever they have, they still sit on soil. And if that soil is not stable and not helping to support the weight of that, we know definitely that those production methods might not be successful. In having a healthy soil, because a great deal of our soil helps us to filter the water that we drink in our underground aquifers. Well-maintained soil acts as a natural filter for water, improving water quality by breaking down pollutants and promoting groundwater recharge. Now, we see all this rain that falls. More than 70% of that rain that we see falling from the sky, actually, even if we collect it on our house roof, more than 80% of it still goes into the soil and down into our aquifers. So it is that having that healthy soil will help to filter out any pollutants and to provide vital clean water that we will use in our daily living. We know having a healthy soil ensures that we must have great or excellent biodiversity in that soil. So having a healthy soil, it offers or encourages a thriving biodiversity in the soil. It also provides a habitat for various organisms. Now, these organisms, we know we need them living in the soil, aerating the soil, moving on in the soil, making the soil healthy for our crops to grow, and even for grasses to grow for animals that we're going to be raising. So it is to ensure that we have that. In recent times, over the past maybe 5 to 10 years, we hear everybody start talking about carbon footprint, carbon sequestration. Now, healthy soil, as it says here, plays a critical role in carbon sequestration. It helps to mitigate the climate change by storing carbon. Now, you'll hear most experts say, once you find a soil that has a high amount of carbon content in it, it's a very healthy soil. So healthy soil can capture and retain more carbon, thus reducing the effect of the greenhouse gases emissions in our atmosphere. So it is a healthy soil, we can be very productive for us. For the soil to be healthy, we need to ensure that we have a pretty good idea what are the components of the soil. So we're looking at first here in terms of the mineral composition. Soil is primarily made of minerals. Now, there are a large number of minerals, both macro and micro, and these minerals provide essential nutrients to our plants. The mineral content includes sand, silt, clay, and depending on the mixture or the combination of these, that will determine the type of soil we have. But most of you would remember your high school years when they spoke about loamy soil, sandy soil, and clay soil, depending on the composition. So that's what we have. We look now in terms of the organic matter. The organic matter in our soil comes from either vegetative or comes from animal. The organic matter itself enhances the soil fertility by improving the nutrients that are available. It holds the moisture in the soil, and it also encourages microbial activity. This, as I mentioned before, may come from decomposed organic matter, trees, shrubs, or wood, or it may also come from the droppings from animals. So this does form part of the soil structure that we have. We cannot look at mineral or at organic matter without looking at the water or the moisture in the soil, as it is that this water or moisture is critical for soil health. It helps to dissolve the matter. It helps to dissolve the organic matter, helps to dissolve the vegetative matter. It also helps to encourage the insects and the biological insects and all of the pathogens or the positive pathogens that we have in the soil, in terms of for them to either break down or to aerate the soil or to release the nutrients that our plants need to grow. So water is critical in terms of soil health, in terms of dissolving these nutrients. Jointly with water, we must have air in the soil because the plant roots in the ground need to breathe. So air in the soil, particularly oxygen, is vital for the survival of the organisms that are burrowing around in the soil, the organisms that live and aerate that soil. So the air is essential for the plant roots, for their growth and for their development. Now, we spoke about soil and soil health. Now, why is soil health important? So we're looking at here in particularly, healthy soil supports plant growth. Now, when we say plant, we're not only speaking about our tomatoes, our lettuce, our cabbage, our cauliflowers. We're also speaking about our cedar. We're speaking about mahogany, speaking about the trees that we use to cut down to build tables, to build beds. We're also speaking about the alfalfa. We're speaking about the kudzu. We're speaking about the grasses that we use either to graze our animals on or that we cut to feed our animals. So healthy soil provides essential nutrients to plants, fostering growth and productivity. It also acts as a reservoir for water, supporting root system and leading to stronger crops. So that's one of the main reasons why it is important. Jointly, it maintains a balance in the ecosystem. Now, For those of you who are in agriculture, produce both animals and crops, we know the animals and crops, they have a symbiotic relationship. Animals provide manure, crops provide green leaf vegetation to feed the animal. So soil health is vital for our ecosystem functioning, including water filtration, carbon storage, as we mentioned, and nutrient recycling. A healthy soil contributes to biodiversity resilience against environmental changes. Now we know when we have our hillsides that have lush green trees and grasses, when the heavy rains come through the heavy winds, they help a lot in terms of filtering the air, so it reduces the effect of hurricanes and some strong winds. But what they also do is they allow the water to filtrate into the soil as opposed to running off and causing landslides. So that does assist us greatly. And also, we use this as part of our food. It ensures food security. With a growing global population, as I mentioned previously, healthy soil is essential for sustainable food production. It not only fosters area to produce, but it fosters a higher productivity and quantity of food. So that's what we're looking at. Now, we look at here at two soil types, looking at one at minerals, which are nutritional bone. Soil is composed of mineral, organic matter, water, and air. For those of you, maybe you remember years in high school, you remember these are the components of soil. But these add together enhances the soil structure and fertility. But water is critical in plant growth, and the air facilitates the respiration of soil organisms. Now, each one of these components play a particularly but interrelated role in the soil composition and the quality of the soil. The mineral supplies nutrients, the organic matter, the nutrient retention, the microbial activities, these are the earthworms and insects in there. They also help to support the aeration and the water support plant hydration. Now, all of these together work together to function and to ensure that we have healthy soil. Now, for some persons who might have virgin soil that they're planting, or some persons who have soil that has been produced before, what we're going to seek to do now is to give you a few ideas, just 2 or 3, that you can practically use in ways of maintaining your soil health. 1, crop rotation. Now, in crop rotation, as most people give the definition, they say simply, you plant different crops in the same area in a rotation. It could be a variety of crops, but you need to ensure that whatever crops you're using, know that these are crops that would either assist in replacing, or if they take replacing or improving the texture or the structure of the soil. For example, if you're planting a crop such as a bean crop, any type of bean, now these are crops and nitrogen fixing crops, meaning they put nitrogen into the soil. Following a crop like that, you'll plant a crop, a leafy crop, which is like lettuce, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, and so forth. These are plants that takes out nitrogen from the soil. Now, once you've already taken out the nitrogen, what you can then come into that crop, into that soil, and plant a crop that will help you to break up the surface of the soil. You're looking at a crop like a sweet potato, turnip, carrots. These are what we call root crops. And these are sometimes semi-shallow root crops. They go down maybe 6 to 8 inches in the soil. So what they do when you're now harvesting these crops, you then be turning over the surface of the soil. What that will do to help to incorporate the organic matter down on the surface, and it helps to aerate the soil. Now, this technique of crop rotation helps to prevent soil nutrient depletion. It reduces pest population and enhances the soil structure. So this is a very good technique for you to use. Now, the examples of the crops that I gave you can be used in crop rotation, but you may also use a different variety of crops. But you must ensure that these are crops that either, if they extract nutrients, you must put a crop that then replaces that nutrient. And if it's a crop that goes on the surface or a shallow crop, you then find a crop that will help to break up the soil and to improve the soil texture and the soil structure. Now, another technique that you may use in terms of assisting with your soil health is in terms of cover cropping. Now, when we speak about cover cropping, some persons think simply cover cropping only means you plant a crop that covers the soil. You may also plant vegetation in terms of grasses, alfalfa, aliment, different types of grasses that you would use to feed your animals. So you can use those as a type of cover crop. And you may also use pumpkin, squash, watermelon, any of these crops that run and that cover the surface. Cover cropping is essential planting crop that is not intended only for harvest, but primarily to cover the soil. So as I mentioned before, you may plant or allow your land to go fallow, where you allow weeds to grow. So that does offer some cover. So the effect of the sun does not dry the moisture to the soil. Or you may actually plant a crop, or you may plant grass, which you could use to feed your animal. Now, these crops improve the soil structure and texture. It also enhances water retention and prevents erosion during off season. Now, I'm going to touch on this topic about erosion. Most persons, when you hear the word erosion, they think only of erosion of heavy water running down a hillside or water washing over the soil. But if you do have soil that has been depleted of its vegetative cover, or soil that does not have any vegetative cover, the heat from the sun will dry it out and the wind will blow away the topsoil. So you do have erosion in that form also. So erosion is not only about water washing away the soil, it can be the wind blowing away the topsoil also. Now, when we speak about reduced tillage, what we're looking at here is a tillage that minimizes soil disturbance. When we say soil disturbance, mean that you're actually plowing the land, but not with a whole big tractor and a deep disc plow. You may use maybe a smaller tiller, which will maybe go on just maybe about 6 to 8 inches, or you may use a digging fork or a hand fork. Now, these are type of implements that will minimize the depth to which you're plowing. This also helps in preserving the soil structure and the microbial activity. This practice also reduces erosion, helps to maintain moisture in the soil, and contribute to the overall soil health. Now, there's some persons also, what they said, instead of doing reduced tillage, they do what we call zero tillage. In zero tillage, what they do not plow the land at all. They will plant the first crop. Once they've harvested, they simply cut down that crop, allow it to dry in the field, and then plant on that. Now, we've seen that some farmers do use that in crops like corn, in particular about pumpkins also. Yeah, once they've harvested all the pumpkins, they simply pull the pumpkin root up, allow the vine to dry, covers it down, and plant second crop on that. Now, in doing that, what you're doing, adding organic matter to the soil in terms of the residue of that first harvest, but you're also allowing the microbial activity within that soil to improve, thus improving the nutrient of your soil. Now, we're looking at here at best practices. There is no one best practice for maintaining soil health, no one single practice. It's a number of practices that you may entail or you may do to ensure you have the healthiest possible soil. So we look at effective soil management practices are crucial in enhancing soil health. Key strategies include conducting regular tests in terms of the pH and the nutrient level of your soil, applying organic amendments. Now, these may be in terms of compost or organic matter to improve the soil structure and fertility, and adapting sustainable farming practices that reduces tillage and crop rotation. In the diagram you'll see on your screen right now, you'll see a farmer. What he's doing is using what we call a liquid slurry to apply to this field. Now, this is a field that is used to graze animals on open area. So it is that what he does, the symbiotic relationship that exists between the field that he has there and his animals, he's using the liquefied pen manure, and he simply just sprays it all over, which adds nutrient back to the soil that he's looking at right now and to where he's going to graze his animals later on. Now, as we move forward, we're looking now at, before we continue, we're going to pause here a bit. I've given a bit of information about soil health. I just want to see if there's any questions here before we continue into some more other aspects of the structure. So I'm not sure if anybody already placed any questions in the Q&A that you want us to look at first before we continue.
Definitely. There are 2 questions in the Q&A. The first question is, in your opinion, what impact does the volcano here in St. Lucia have on our soil?
I would love to have some of that soil that comes from that volcano. It's high nutrient, high potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen. It improves the soil texture, the soil structure. It makes the soil very fertile. The volcano in itself, after that eruption whatever a long time ago, and as that rock itself mineral has broken down, what it has done is it's added a lot of nutrient to the soil. So you'll find that soil that is around the foothills of that day will be very, very, very fertile. That's what it adds to it.
Thank you very much. The next question is, how do I maintain soil health if I am growing in pots?
If you're growing in pots, is
Yes,
that the question? Growing in pots.
growing in
Now,
pots. Yes.
the question that can be done in two parts. You could be growing the soil in the pot, and the pot is on concrete, which you will not have much microbial activity under the pot, but the pot is outside in the soil. You would have insects that can go in and exit. But if you're planting in pots, or even if you're planting in bags, once you've completed a cycle of your production, meaning, let's say you're planting sweet peppers, for example, sweet peppers within 50 to 60 days of transplanting, you'll be harvesting. And some sweet peppers can harvest maybe up to as far as the next 3 to 5 weeks. Once you've completed that cycle, you simply take the soil, take it back out of the pot, you mix it back up. So what you do, you're breaking up the soil structure, you're aerating the soil. You can then add organic matter to the soil, mix it in again. You can then now take that very same soil, you can add whether it's cocoa peat, you can add some animal manure, some green mesh, where you might have had some compost you might have had maybe from your kitchen or from your backyard, add it back into it, and you start a cycle again. So you do not necessarily want to just leave that soil in that same pot and keep planting crops over and over in that same pot. You want to get a chance to mix that soil and to aerate that soil, add organic amendments to make sure you improve the structure and the texture of that soil. You want to make sure you have that. Okay, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Next question. What food crops can be grown in agroforestry?
Okay, we look at agroforestry. Before you're looking at it in terms of what crops you can do, you need to look at what your area is in terms of rain, your topography of your area, whether it's flat, whether it's sloping, if it's hilly, if it's stony. You need to look at the type of soil that you're using. For a country, maybe I do have a bit of information about maybe St. Lucia that I know does have some hilly areas, some root crops like edos or tanya, as they will call it, sweet potato, yams will go very well in there. You can then look at, if you're having a forestry area where you will have shrubs, that you can look at passion fruit that you can grow that will then vine onto those plants. So you have that. You can also look at, to some part, different types of carrots that you can plant in that area also. The concern when you're doing a crop like tomato would be because tomato is sometimes susceptible to the high moisture content where fungus will develop easy on them. That would be a challenge. And it is that if you're looking in agroforestry, you're not focusing a lot on rotating the soil so much in there, as tomato also is one that affects by nematodes very easily and other bacteria in the soil that affects that as a crop. So it is, you need to first have an assessment of the area that you're going to plant, topography of that area, and then you decide what kind of crops you want to plant in it.
Thank you. The next question is, how do we maintain clay-like soil and how can it be enhanced?
How do you maintain
Clay-like soil, and how do we keep it? How can it be enhanced, sorry.
Okay, one of the positives that we have in terms of clay soil has the highest nutrient content in it. It has the highest nutrient content because it has the lowest permeability in terms of water. So it just basically retains all the nutrients inside there. What you need to ensure that you improve the soil texture. So in improving texture, you can add something like the shredded coconut husk, as a cocoa peat, as they will call it. You can add what we call gut sand, which is sand that has more larger pebbles in it to improve the aeration of that. You can add the premix added to that soil, so it helps to improve again the structure and the aeration or the irritability of that soil. You can look at that. So you'll add that to the clay to improve that. So that's one way you can do it. We do sometimes suggest that you ensure that the combination of whatever you're adding to it does not change too much. So the clay soil go from having a high water retention to no water retention. So to ensure you have a proper balance in terms of that structure. If you're looking at it outside in terms of your garden, you can put the amendments that I mentioned before and probably just turn it in with a digging fork or a light tiller. If you're looking at it in pots or bags that you may use, you simply take the soil out, mix in the amendments, and then we pot it or we bag it, and you plant your crops in it.
Thank you very much. Next question. You could pause me at any time if you want to continue.
No, go ahead.
Next question. Which plants are cover cropping? Which plants are cover cropping?
Which plants can be used for cover cropping?
Well, yes.
If it is you are a livestock farmer, almost any type of grass that you feed your animal with, you can use it as a cover crop. You can make the cover crop where you plant it uniquely just to cover the soil, or you plant it with the intention of harvesting that grass or harvesting the forage to feed your animals. If you're looking at a farmer who's planting a cover crop to cover his soil as a crop itself, meaning you're going to harvest vegetables from it, you look at crops like watermelon, you look at pumpkin, squash, sunmelon, you're looking at crops that you're going to cover the surface of the area. Now, again, you may also use a crop like a legume, like string beans. We do have some farmers who do that. So they plant the string beans closer, so it creates a canopy over the soil. It holds in moisture, and at the same time, it adds nutrient to the soil. So it depends on what crop or what aspect of production you are in. You then would determine which particular type of crop or vegetation that you would plant to use as your cover crop.
Thank you. The next question is, do you agree with the burnt soil method, and how is it done?
The bone soil?
Burnt.
Burnt.
Yes.
It's a catch-22 question, because there's some person who uses slash and burn method to clear area to plant it. The challenge you have when using the slash and burn or the burnt method, as some people say, is that when you light that fire, what you do, you're killing the microbial, or you're killing the biodiversity in that thin layer of the soil. Even though the ash adds back nutrient, it adds nutrient, but you've taken out the live insects that are inside there. So it does form a challenge. So if it is that you're thinking or you're using that method, it must be used in a controlled way. Meaning, if you're going to use it, you then have to now go and reintroduce organic matter to encourage insects to come from other areas into that area now to assist in keeping your soil healthy. And also, you need to be careful in terms of your fire just running around and causing other damage. So you need to be careful with that. But I do know some farmers who still use it, but it must be used controlled and sparingly, as you want to prevent any further damage or making your soil not very healthy.
All right, thank you. The next question is, how do you create soil that boosts plant growth organically?
How do you create soil?
Yes, that boosts the plant growth organically.
Well, we cannot create soil. That's God's job. We cannot create soil. We can create a planting medium, but we can't create soil. Soil is something that is done naturally. If you're seeking to get a soil that is high in nitrogen, for example, you get a soil that has a high amount of organic matter in it. You could add potash, you can add ash, you can add maybe burnt charcoal, any type of burnt vegetation. You can add that to your soil to improve or to increase the nitrogen in it, ensuring that it has high permeability of water, ensuring that it has a high organic content, and ensuring that it has high aeration. That type of soil is a healthy soil that also has living organisms in it that keep replenishing it. And that type of soil is what would be well or healthy in terms of giving you a high production or high yield in whatever crops or vegetation that you might be planting.
Okay, thank you very much. So far, we have 6 questions. Are you okay with answering all 6 right now?
Just take two more, and then we will go into a bit more, and then we'll go back into the questions.
Excellent. So our first one would be, is sand and sawdust useful to improve soil health?
Now, when we say sand, if you're looking at sea sand, no, too high in salt. Sand that is maybe in a gut or a ravine, that can be used because it has the size of the grains in it. Mixing that into other soil assists a lot in terms of the aeration of the soil. In terms of sawdust, it depends on the type of board or the type of wood you use to make that sawdust. As you do have some of them that are coming treated, and the type of chemicals they use to treat that, if you add that into your soil, it can change the pH. Some of it you can add some chemicals that are not good for your soil or good for your microbial insects in the soil. So you have to be careful what type of sawdust you're using to mix that to mix it into creating or improving your soil texture or structure.
Thank you very much. And the last question for right now would be, can human feces be used as manure? And if not, why?
Yes, it can be, but it must be treated. We as humans, we produce some of the most toxic, dangerous, highly infectious feces. We do. So if it is that is an avenue that somebody wish to engage or wish to use, you need to ensure that this is treated. There are many ways or methods that can use to treat it before it can be used. I do know of some large hotels who do use that. They put it back into their ponds, and then it's treated there, and then that water is then used to water their lawns and different plants and so on. They can be used, but it must be treated. Not used as you would just use a simple maybe cattle or sheep dung. No, that would not be my recommendation at all. Okay. Now, I know there are quite a few persons who may have some more questions. What we're going to do, we're going to go now into the second part of my presentation. And what I'm hoping we will do, as is done before, we can, once the topic goes through, you put your questions in the question and answer in the chat, and they will seek to answer those questions. And then we can have a robust discussion after we've completed the second part of it. All right. As we move forward here now, particularly what we were looking at, this is just a bit of a refresher of what we just spoke about. We can look at a comparison between both of these two soil areas. On one part, you see an area that has been using crop rotation and cover cropping. And what it does, you see, it gives you a nice lush vegetation where this could be used now to cut to feed back animals, or even if you go now to plow this land, that this area would then have higher nutrient content, higher water retention content, and be more favorable for your planting. On the opposite side, in terms of, you see where it is now, it is drying, it has been voided of all the vegetation. So the heat from the sun will then dry the moisture from here, and the wind will then come in and simply take off the surface, which is going to be most of the nutrients you're looking at. So it is that the soil moisture and the soil moisture retention assist greatly in terms of reducing erosion, and also sustainable in terms of ensuring it assists greatly in terms of pest management and improve the overall health of the soil. The same way it is that maybe if you go outside in the sun with no shirt on, the sun is going to burn your skin naturally. It is the same thing when you look at plants, the same thing you look at soil. We need to ensure that the soil has some method of cover. And as we go into this time where we see higher temperatures, heavier rains, and we're looking at the effect of the global warming here, particularly on us as smaller islands, we do feel the effect of it. And it is that this is what we're looking at. Now, what we're going to seek to do in this aspect, in this part of the presentation, is look at some of the challenges that we are facing in terms of soil health and soil health management. Soil health management encounters significant obstacles such as soil degradation, erosion, loss of organic matter. These challenges are intensified by practices such as monoculture, excessive fertilizer use, urban development, which contribute to the deterioration of soil quality and ecosystems. Particularly, we're going to go a bit more into some of these aspects. I would like to speak firstly here on the monoculture aspect. Now, we do have some farmers who say, well, I specialize in this particular type of crop. Now, it is by choice that you do that, but we do want to ensure that if you are a farmer who specializes in a particular one type of crop where you produce that same crop over and over, it is more imperative that you ensure that you do as much as you can to improve the soil health of what you're using. And not just simply by adding organic matter, using cover cropping, reducing your tillage, by also allowing that particular soil to have a time where it remains fallow, where it can then recover from any effect that you may have in terms of the farm. We look also, particularly in monocropping, it does create that particular pests because you're planting the same crop, the same place. The pests, once you go through the cycle, then always attack that crop. So in the monoculture, again, you're also exposing your crop, be it grass or your vegetable, whatever crop you're planting, to the effect that that pest or disease might have in that area. So you need to ensure that you manage your soil properly. Now, in looking at that, we will identify and tackle some key areas in terms of soil health. Particularly, and as one of the most pressing one we have right now is climate change. Now, we do not have any direct control over what is happening right now. When we're speaking about greenhouse gas emissions and so forth, we in some of these, in our smaller islands, we do not have any large industries that would have a lot of these gases exposed. But we are some of the islands who are most affected by increased sea level, the erratic weather in terms of weather patterns, excessive rain, longer dry period, and we are feeling that effect. So the increase in temperature and erratic weather patterns affect soil moisture, soil health, and lead to decrease in agricultural productivity. It looked also here in terms of urbanization and what we call peri-urbanization. Now, when we speak about urbanization, what we're talking about is the expansion of the urban areas that lead to soil seal, loss of arable land, and component issues related to food security. Now, we in most of the islands that are now developing, we see persons are now moving a lot from the either rural area into urban or from urban to the rural area. Now, some of these persons who are moving, they could be moving because of the availability of jobs, for security and different reasons. But we must understand with any movement, whether from urban to rural or rural to urban, it does affect the soil. It does affect the soil's ability to recuperate itself to produce the food. It does affect the time that the soil will have to recuperate to be able to be considered a healthy soil. And it does also affect the availability of the area that we may have in terms of for food production. Now, as we spoke about greenhouse gases, pollution is definitely a factor that does affect in terms of the health of our soil. Contamination from agricultural runoff and industrial activities degrade the soil quality, affecting the biological health and productivity. Now, in some of our smaller countries, the smaller islands, we do not have a high amount of industrialization through agriculture. But in some countries, like in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Barbados, in Guyana, where they do, whether it's bauxite, whether they do gold or minerals and so forth, and a large amount of water is used, even the extraction of these materials, you do have runoff water that leaches into the soil. And once that soil becomes contaminated by whatever kind of chemicals it is, it takes a very long time for that soil to be able to recuperate itself. The soil is such a wonderful thing that you may have some of the most poisonous chemicals going into that soil, and the soil have the ability over time, once allowed and once healthy, to be able to recover and to recuperate from that infestation or that pollution and then produce a healthy soil where you can plant crops in. But it is that we must ensure that we give that soil time the way you can do it, and we allow that those processes for them to take place. Now, when we're looking at soil and soil health does not always only happen by itself. we can offer ways or innovations that can assist in that soil health. Now, the need for innovation here seeks to address challenges and the call for innovative solutions, including new agricultural practices and technologies. Now, when we speak about new agricultural practices and technologies, we are now going from farmers simply depending on a tractor and a plow to plow the soil to plant, to a farmer maybe using part of that area where he then tills the land, but another area where he uses it to plant something maybe in hydroponics, in aeroponics, in FT, in so many other different areas of producing food solely in the soil. Or he may decide he'll simply cover the soil with a ground cover and plant food in bags, in grow bags, in pots, and so forth, allowing that soil time to recover. These are just some of the innovations that can be used that assist in ensuring the health of the soil and for proper soil management. We spoke previously about contamination. Now, some person may say, but we are a small island, we don't really have any big industries. We may not, but we still can contaminate our soil. When we speak of contamination here, first and foremost, look at, as I mentioned, in terms of heavy metals such as lead and arsenic. Now, these are some chemicals that can accumulate in the soil. And once they accumulate in the soil, they can go into the fruits, into the plants that we eat, and go into our bodies, and it can make us sick. These contamination often originates from industrial activities and improper waste disposal. Now, one of the challenges that we have here is a small island, or small islands. We have two things that we sometimes produce, and we're not very mindful of how it is that we dispose of it. One is the oil that we take from our vehicles, that black oil or the dirty oil that we have. That is one that must be properly maintained. It must be properly used and disposed of. Most persons simply go to the mechanic shop, change the oil, and the mechanic keeps the oil. The question was to ask ourselves, what does the mechanic do with that oil? How does he dispose of it? Is he disposing of it properly where it does not contaminate the soil? We have our car. After a certain amount of time, we take the car battery out of the car, we replace it. What happens to that car battery? How do we dispose of it? We sometimes also have waste we look at in terms of construction and building, what we use for insulation and for air conditioning and so forth. We hire somebody, they come, they take out, they put it in. The question is, what happens to that material? So it is that we might be contaminating our soils, not directly, but indirectly, through us not taking time to wonder, well, what is the mechanic doing with that? Or what does this person do with that material they take it from? And as this, we live on one island, you may contaminate one small area, but it's one soil. So it does have the possibility of leaching across and contaminating further the area. Now, for farmers who do or have a heavy use or infestation of pests and who use phosphorus and pesticides, pesticides used in agriculture can persist in the soil for an extended period of time, affecting soil health and potentially entering the food chain. Now, this for sure raises significant concerns regarding food security and ecosystem integrity. Now, there was some time ago a recall for a chemical called gramaxone. Gramaxone was a chemical that was used for many, many years in terms of controlling weeds. It was a chemical very effective. You sprayed it, it just burned everything it touched. What persons were finding is that with the heavy use of this type of chemical, there was a link, or there was a possibility that this chemical stayed in the soil, and when you plant the crops, it go into the crop. And then you are now indirectly consuming that from the crops you're harvesting. So there was a reduce, or there was a call for it not to be used as much as it was being used. So we're looking at, that may just be one, but you may look at other pesticides that have residual effect, not only on the crop you're planting, but on the soil you're planting in. So it is, we need to ensure that when we're talking about pesticides and the residue of pesticides, that we manage that type of pesticides residue effectively. Or more, we can look at diversifying it from the phosphorus to sometimes more organic base. When we talk about organic base, something like the neem, cayenne pepper, that's one that can be used as a pesticide. If it is you have a small backyard garden, you may decide, okay, I just want to get some newspaper or some paper, maybe burn it in a metal bucket and mix the water in that, and you can use that as an insecticide and as a fertilizer also in a small area. When you have maybe just two or three trees planted, maybe on your windowsill in your backyard, you can use something like that. That does reduce the amount of phosphate-based chemicals that you may use. Presently in the market, there are some organic based insecticide. Xantar is one that can come to my mind, which has a very, very low residue effect. So it is that as a farmer, you must consider not only the effectiveness of the pesticide or the chemical you're using, but also the residue effect of that. Even though the label may say 3 to 5 days you can harvest, but 3 to 5 days under what condition? They might have tested it under a rainy condition, might have tested it under a hot condition, under a cold condition. And it is the pesticide is used right around the whole world, and we have different conditions. So we need to ensure not just that we are reading the proper label when it comes to the residual effect of insecticides we use, but that we allow time for that pesticide to be either watered out, filtered out, or grown out from our crops before we look at consuming them. Now, we mentioned this before in terms of industrial waste and the impact of the industrial waste. Now, we do not have a great deal of that in our smaller islands, but as I say, in the larger islands, we look at that. So industrial waste, including chemical and heavy metals, contribute to soil contamination, posing risk to both human health and environmental integrity. Effective remediation strategies are essential to restore affected areas. Now, we do have some soils that have been affected by industrial waste, but these are soils that will take an extended time before they can recuperate, before they get to the healthy soil level that we're looking for, where we can plant vegetables in it. And this in itself would entail sometimes adding some other soil amendments to it, or simply allowing that area to grow fallow in natural vegetation, and the plants themselves extracting that nutrient, burning it up in their own ecosystem or in their own bodies. And as we plow them back in over time, we can recuperate some of the natural organism or the biodiversity we might have in that soil. But it is we need to ensure that we minimize this aspect of it. We've looked at soil health, what the soil is made of, how do we keep the soil healthy, what are some of the challenges in keeping that soil healthy. Now we're going to look at just a few aspects in terms of the future direction in terms of soil health and soil health management. As I mentioned before, it is very difficult for any one person to either maintain, to create, maintain, or to improve the health of the soil. It must be a joint effort. It must be a joint activity that involves not only you as the farmer, but somebody simply as a livestock farmer, extensionist, or even by some policies the government may have. All of these working together would assist where that part is concerned. Particularly, we here look first at the collaborative approach to soil health and soil health management. Collaboration between the stakeholders is vital for developing effective soil health strategies. Farmers bring practical experience, researchers provide scientific insight, and policymakers create supportive frameworks. Now, let's speak particularly about our farmers. Our farmers, they are sometimes the first hand, because they're the one who actually hands in the ground, the soil on the crop, planting, tilling, watering, fertilizing. Now, these are persons who bring the experience. They will tell you, this soil last year, we produced 1,000 pounds of sweet potato. This year, we realize we only have 600 pounds. That we're looking at a 40% decrease. And they may be able to tell you, but last year we had this amount of pests, this year we have more pests. Last year, we had more vegetation, we have less vegetation. Last year we had a higher amount of water, or we had a higher amount of moisture in terms of dew, and this year we have less. So they're giving you the practical reason what or how the soil health would have affected the productivity of their crops and thus their income. Now we look at the researchers. These are the persons, the economists and the soil scientists who are going to go out. They're going to test the soil to see how the nutrients are, whether they lack or whether they have excess of it, whether the soil is contaminated. So it is their insight, jointly collaborating with the farmer, with the practical information that will help to assist us in terms of improving the health of our soils. And in doing that, we cannot leave out our policymakers Our policymakers may be at the Ministry of Agricultural level or at the Ministry of Lands or Sustainability or whichever area. But it is that these policies that they make would allow whether certain area of soil or certain area of land can be used for agriculture or not used, or it could look at designating particularly area for agriculture. So the policies that they would make and the supportive framework that they make is what would assist in ensuring that we have this collaborative approach for it. With all this in mind, it comes at a cost. Now we look at investment in research is critical in terms of the soil health and soil management. Investing in research in soil health is critical for advancing sustainable practices. Now, for the same soil scientists that we spoke about in the agronomists, it costs money in terms of what they would need and the equipment and so forth. So ongoing studies on their behalf, on our behalf, or the farmers' behalf, can lead to innovative solutions for soil degradation or for contaminated issues. Sometimes the soil may become contaminated directly or indirectly, but it is that through research by our agronomists and our soil scientists that they can give us innovative ways or new ways of improving that degraded soil or the contaminated soil. Now they're putting together, be it through research, be it through the practical information from our farmers, or even they themselves going out and having soil samples made, they can then use that. But again, that does come at a cost. That's what we're looking at. Now, our farmers are our first line. Then we have our scientists who will do all the experiments. But it is that empowering those farmers, assisting them, be it through training, through techniques, to assist them in maintaining the soil health or improving the soil health, that can improve greatly the quality and the health and the management of the soil. Education and outreach initiatives can empower farmers with knowledge about soil management practices. Now, if the farmer knows that in planting these crops in a particular area in rotation or planting this particular crop a particular time of the year is going to somehow reduce how much is going to be harvesting next year or next cycle, he's not going to want to do that. But if it is that he knows that he can use crop rotation, he can use cover cropping, he can use agroforestry, he can use many other ways of planting crops, many other soil management practices of adding organic matter to the soil, assisting in light tillage or zero tillage of the soil to improve his structure so he can improve his productivity, he will want that. So training programs can enhance this ability to implant or to implement sustainable techniques effectively. So what we're doing, we're educating the farmer to be a better farmer. And the farmer being a better farmer, reducing the effect that his farming or his production have on the soil. This would go along in terms of assisting, in terms of improving the soil health and managing the overall health of that soil. Now, we're looking at future trends and practices in soil health and soil management. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are now facing with a growing world population that must be fed. So it is that with the population growing and the requirement for more food for those persons, it is that we must have trends and practices that would assist. Now, we have some persons who say they're sometimes afraid of the technology in agriculture and the AI and so forth. But it is that we need to ensure that we have ways of using these trends and practices to assist us in improving. One we're looking at now is what we call precision agriculture. Now, with precision agriculture, it utilizes data analytics and IoT devices to optimize soil management practices and enhancing soil health and soil crop yield. When we say precision agriculture, we're looking at where farmers now use GPS, farmers now use radars and so forth to apply the right amount of water at the right time at the right area, to control pest area, maybe using drones and so forth. Farmers are now using technology to improve their productivity. So that's what we're looking at when we're speaking about precision agriculture. We're looking at here now at innovative soil practices. We're looking at biocolor application, Cover cropping by gaining traction on methods of improving soil structure, enhancing nutrient retention, and what we call sequestration of carbon. We mentioned that at the beginning, where we say that soil that has a high amount of carbon in it is a very, very rich soil, has a high amount of nutrient in it. And these innovative practices, as we mentioned, cover cropping, crop rotation, among a few mentioned before, these innovations do not function in isolation. Some of them complement each other or they work jointly in ensuring that we enhance the health and the management of the soil. So it is that improving the soil texture and soil structure, be it through planting a crop that would add or release nutrient, that would break up the pesticides or increase the biological or increase or improve the ecosystem in that soil, that will go a long way in terms of improving the soil health and management. As we mentioned, AI in soil management, the use of artificial intelligence in soil health management allows for predictive modeling and real-time monitoring, aiding farmers in making informed decisions. Now, when we look at AI, you say, well, why would artificial intelligence have anything to do with farming? But it is you yourself, you will not be able to go out and see 5, 7 miles down the road where you have all your corn planted. But with AI, using drones or even certain other technologies, you can predict the weather patterns, rain, wind, temperature, the effect the wind will have on your crop production, the effect the wind and the rain will have on your soil fertility, the effect the wind, the rain, the temperature will have on your soil nutrient, and all of these factors does affect your soil health and your productivity in terms of the amount of produce you have, and does affect your economical output for you as a farmer. So the use of AI in soil management assists a great deal in terms of the predictive modeling and real-time monitoring of your crops and real-time monitoring of the environment in which your plants are being produced. The most important thing is for us to prioritize the management of soil and soil health to ensure that it is one of the most essential aspect of sustainability in terms of agriculture and in terms of our food and food system. Soil health for us is the cornerstone of agricultural productivity and environmental stewardship. By understanding soil composition, implementing best agricultural practices, and utilizing techniques for maintenance of soil health, this will ensure that for our future generations that we have healthy soil, that we have productive soil, and that we have soil that we can pass on to all our generations to ensure that they have food to produce for all the other generations. So I hope that I've given you quite a bit of mouthful. I've given you some information that you can utilize tomorrow in terms of your crop rotation. You can utilize in terms of preventing your soil being degraded. Some information in terms of improving the composition and texture of your soil. And I hope also that you've been given some best practices that you can use to ensure that you have healthy soil and that you manage the soil that you're going to be using. I now turn over to you guys so we can have a robust discussion and we can field some questions from you all.
Thank you
Okay, thank you.
so much. And before we do dive into the question and answer segment, I'm gonna now post the poll. So you guys could use the time now to please, I'm gonna launch the poll so you could use the time now to vote. And in the meantime, I'm gonna let the question flow. So the first question is from Miss Eugene. What does planting with black plastic on soil do when planting?
Now, the black plastic, it functions in two parts. One, it acts as a weed barrier to suppress the weed growth. Sorry?
Mr. Bell, you're kind of sticking at the moment.
Okay, you hear me clearly now? Are you hearing me clearly?
Okay, so.
Okay, you hearing me?
I can hear you now. I think it was my connection.
Okay, all right. I heard the question. Let me try to respond to it.
Okay.
The black plastic, as they said, it functions in two parts. One, it acts as a weed block or a weed suppression for the weeds keep the weeds down. 2, because of the color, it heats up, so it sometimes, what we call it, cooks the weeds and it burns the weeds underneath, and it does cause condensation, so it creates moisture and it keeps in moisture so the sun does not dry the moisture out from the soil. So it functions in both ways.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Our next question is really of a scenario leading up to a question. So Sandra is stating that she have a spicy guava tree. The fruit spoils at the bottom and the top. And wait, let me try to grasp this. She has a spicy guava tree and the fruit spoil at the bottom and the top, while on the tree does that have anything to do with the soil, the spoiling of the fruit at the bottom?
If the fruit is spoiling just after fruit set, it depends on when it is. It could be a nutrient deficiency. It could be a macronutrient deficiency. I think is potassium you would think you would need for that for fruit setting. I think so. The fruit rot, it could be bacterial, it might be microbial, because it could be an insect, a small insect, that once you have the pollination and the fruit starts setting, it may be sucking sap from it that will cause the fruit to rot. There's no one particular response I could give in terms of a solution for that. You would tend to have an assessment of it in terms of the fruit, any parasites, any pests, any small microbes, or it could be a nutritional issue.
All right, thank you very much. The next question is, how do we determine the best time to implement crop rotation, or how often do we rotate crops?
The best time to implement crop rotation is yesterday. We should be doing it all the time. Crop rotation, it depends on the crops you're planting. Depends on the cycle of your crops. If you're planting a crop that is 40, 50 days, then you cycle 40, 50 days. You're planting a crop that is 70 to 85 days, and that's when you go to cycle. But it is that you need to ensure that whatever crops you plant, that it is, as I mentioned previously in my presentation, it is one that if it takes out, a crop must put in. If it compacts or cover, a crop must aerate and must turn over the soil. If you want to turn it over, you must have a crop that covers the soil to hold in the nutrient. So one either complements or supplements the other. You need to make sure you have that. And it is that simple crop rotations, as I mentioned before, it could be using a legume, then using a leafy crop, then a wood crop, and you may have a period of allowing the soil to be fallow. A leafy crop would be like maybe lettuce, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower. A wood crop, turnip, carrots, sweet potato, anything like that. Nitrogen fixing crop could be something in the bean family, string beans, kidney beans, any of those type of beans that would put nutrient into the soil. And these are crops that tend to vary between 45 to 60 or 75 days. So then that would then determine how fast or when you do your crop rotation cycle.
All right, thank you very much. Next question. Is it dangerous to use non-herbivorous animal feces as manure?
Is it dangerous to use
non-herbivorous animal feces?
When we say none, so we're looking at poultry. I think that is the only one I can think about. Well, poultry, pig eats anything. Most other animals. No, I would say no. But what you want to ensure that if you're using the animal droppings, that you use the animal droppings, you could incorporate it as part of your compost, or that you give the animal droppings some time for it to break down in the soil, mix it with soil before you apply it into your planting area. Or if you're going to use it in your planting area, you then till it slightly into your soil. You don't put it directly on your plants, as some types of these can be high in urea, and the urea can then burn your plant, and it will definitely affect your productivity.
All right, thank you very much. Lisa's question is basically comprised of 3. So the first one is it possible to do intercropping to improve soil fertility?
Yes, definitely. Not just only about soil fertility, but it also reduces the attacks of pests. For example, if you plant a crop like tomato, you can plant a crop like scallion, onion, anything will have a strong scent like that within your tomatoes. What that does, for one, it helps to improve the aeration of the soil, because scallion and onions are a crop what we call shallow rooting. So when you pull them out, you're actually breaking up the soil around the tomato tree. More air allow for more water filtration. The strong scents that they do offer, that offer some resistance, or it does offer some way of preventing the pests and so on from coming to your plants to affect your plants. So you can have those.
The next question for Lisa is, do you believe that cucumbers as cover crop could be grown with beans that add nutrients together on the same plot of land to promote soil fertility?
Sorry, I didn't get cucumber and what else?
Cucumber plants grown with beans.
Beans.
Yes, please.
Yeah. The cucumber, whether you plant the cucumber flat when it runs on the ground, or if you're going to do a chalice where it can grow up. Beans, if you're going the string bean, which is the dwarf variety that goes on the ground, or the bean that run on the chalice, they would not challenge each other. You need to ensure that you have proper spacing for them. The cucumber more as a more aggressive plant, a larger leaf, it might cause some problems for the pollination of the beans, because the leaf would then cover over the bean, so you wouldn't have a high pollination for the bean. So you need to ensure you have proper spacing for them. But in terms of them competing for nutrient, they're from two very different families. Nutrient requirement is different, but you need to have the proper spacing in terms of the root spacing for both of them. You need to make sure you have that.
All right, thank you. If there is no earthworm in the soil, does that mean that the soil is not healthy?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't. Having the activity of earthworms, or the presence of earthworms, is an indication of a healthy or a becoming healthy soil. Earthworms are mainly the soil when there's a lot of organic matter in it, because that's what they eat, that's what they consume. So you find that plants, soils that are generally around, maybe around the banana trees areas that are generally regular moist, or area that is constantly being covered, meaning it's always shaded, you find that you'll have a lot of activities by earthworms, but is not one of the single one to determine whether it is or it isn't.
Thank you very much. Can former waste disposal sites be considered for farmland?
We're talking about waste disposal sites. I would say no. If we're talking about just where you dump all your garbage from the whole country, no, because there are a lot of chemicals and a lot of chemicals that would be in that soil, but there would also be a lot of combinations of different chemicals that were brought to that site that are now mixing, that are now leaching into that soil. So the best recommendation would not for you to use that soil uniquely just at that point in time. Some type of treatment must be done to ensure, some type of test must be done to ensure that that soil is healthy enough for you to plant crops in. It may be high in nutrient because organic matter have broken down, but along with that nutrient, or that high nutrient content, you also would have trace chemicals and elements that you would not want in your food system. So you need to be careful with that.
Thank you. What can be used to curb nematodes in soil?
Nematodes, you particularly see that more in tomatoes, and nematicide. There are some persons who, as I said, the companion cropping would be with shallow cropping. Some persons, what they would do as in the crop rotation, till that soil. So what you'll tend to do directly after you do tomatoes, which is one that is affected most severely by nematodes, you plant a crop like string beans, where they would then put the nitrogen fixing nodules into the soil. When you look at the nitrogen fixing nodules, they look similar to the nodules you would see on a tomato plant that is infected by nematodes, but is not the same thing in there. And it is that in doing that, you're breaking up the cycle of the nematodes. If you're somebody who you're looking at reducing the effect or reducing the amount of phosphate chemicals as a nematicide, you can use more natural way of putting it in a crop rotation. Looking at that.
Thank you very much. In terms of soil contamination, can I use steel that are used in construction in my garden as support, or does it help in contaminating the soil?
It does some minimal contamination, but most persons who are using the steel, they'll have maybe 4 or 6 pieces of steel around, maybe an 8x4 box, just to hold the box together. So it's not the best to use. The suggestion would be maybe more something in terms of bamboo or other strips of board, but that in itself will rot even faster. So it does form a challenge, but it's minimal the amount of contamination you'll get from the regular steel you would use. If you can find more aluminum rods, which would rot less, that would be the more ideal to use in terms of as a support for your box or garden you're going to be using.
Thank you very much. What role can traditional practice like intercropping and using seaweed combined with unorthodox method such as mycelium inoculation and electroculture play in strengthening food security in small island states?
Just a combination of all of them. As I mentioned in part of my presentation, there is no one way of ensuring that, because no one particular practice or no one particular technique can ensure soil health or soil health management or improve productivity in our production. So there's a combination of all of those. As I mentioned, I think I did it in this presentation or the one I did previously, it is that we need to ensure that when we're looking at combining these methods, we need to ensure that we look not only at the benefits that they bring in terms of the combination, but we also look at what are the outcomes from those kind of combinations. So all of them jointly can assist where that is concerned.
Thank you. What other crops can I plant among dwarf fruit trees?
Dwarf fruit trees,
Yes.
you can plant most leafy crops, lettuce, celery, some kale. Leafy greens do very well in shaded area. You have a dwarf, you may say you want to do a running crop in there. Running crop could be the melon, honeydew, cantaloupe do well in that type of area also. You may decide you want to do some more thyme, herbs, scallions as we call it. So you can have some of those inside that area in terms of your dwarf trees. You may also decide you want to integrate other plants, maybe ornamentals, orchids, and so forth. So you may have those as options that you can use within that very same area also.
Thank you very much. Since we're experiencing climate warming, global warming, and agroforestry being a form of farming, which plant would be best to be a shade from the sun and still perform well?
It's difficult for you to give you one particular plant that you may use. As I said, the plant type or the tree type you use would depend on your particular area. It's always best to look at trees that are more naturally vegetative in your area. If you look at here for singers, we have something we call wild tamarind. It's something that is just grows all over the place. And it can go from a tree 2 meters high, it can go up to as far as 7 to 8 meters in the air. And it can give you a nice sturdy stock that you could use both as lumber and as shaded area. You can have that. In some other areas, some other countries, you may have other trees that are indigenous to that particular area. Those are the ones who have traditionally done better in terms of being able to use in that aspect. Also, as windbreaks, if you're going to use some of those, if you're planting an area that is open wide and you want to put windbreaks in there, it's generally suggested that you look at more crops that are more natural and indigenous to your particular country or area than to try to introduce a new crop or a new plant into that area.
Thank you very much. Stephanie's question is, what role does soil pH play in the health of the soil? And if any, how do we maintain a healthy soil pH?
The pH of the soil, it does affect how the crops grow, but different crops require different pH. Sweet pepper, for example, is a crop that goes anywhere between 6.5 up to as far as 8. We do have some variety of sweet peppers now that can function in a higher or in a low pH, but the pH in itself does affect a lot in terms of how the nutrient in the soil, how they combine, or how they break down, or how the more complex nutrients in the soil break down for the plant to be able to absorb it. So it is that definitely the addition of soil amendments, be it lime or even more organic matter, does either increase or lower the soil pH. But it depends on what crop you want to do. So you need to ensure that the crop you're planting, that the pH you have meets that requirement. That's why at the beginning, I mean, some part of my presentation I mentioned you need to ensure that you do soil testing so you can have an idea of what is the pH range in your crop or your crop soil, so you ensure that you're planting the crop that meets that pH level. So looking at.
Thank you. I see Miss Williams have her hand up, so I'm going to unmute her so she can speak.
Go ahead, Miss Williams.
Okay. Miss Williams,
Miss Williams, unmute your mic.
you are given permission to speak, so you can go ahead and unmute your mic. Okay, so I'm just gonna mute her back and just continue. Okay. So the next question would be, how can you tell that the soil has a lot of carbon?
That's
The
chemical
soil.
test.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's Miss Williams?
No, I interject
Oh.
when you was answering the question because I think you
Okay.
didn't hear me clearly.
Yes. That's a test you would do. That is something that our soil scientists or our agronomists will have to do that. Simply by looking at the soil, you won't be able to see the carbon in it. And it is that, remember, the plants are the ones who are absorbing the carbon dioxide we are breathing out, and that goes into the plants and down into the soil. So a proper soil test would have to be done to determine that.
Next question, should topsoil from another area be added to soil?
It's recommended that you don't do that, because once you're transporting soil from one area to the next, you're also transporting whatever pathogens in that soil, whatever insects in that soil, whatever chemical or whatever nutrient is in that soil to this new area you're going. It is that some persons sometimes suggest that you use hot water as a way of purifying or cleaning the soil, but it's always a challenge when you're looking at transporting soil from one area to another area. You're bringing whatever comes in the soil along with it to that area.
Thank you. How do I treat blight in the soil?
Some persons, as I said, they use just simply hot water. If you're looking at a small area, you have that. There's some persons you do that in crop rotation, where you do it do it culturally in crop rotation. There's some persons who do it chemically, using phosphate chemicals for it. Again, it depends a lot on the size of the area that you're looking at. It also depends on whatever crop you have that is being affected by that blight in the soil. So you have that. We do have certain types of blight that are resistant to crop rotation and resistant to maybe just simply hot water. So thus, agronomists would recommend a soil stimulant or a soil additive to it to try to control that.
Thank you very much. I see that Melissa has her hand up, so I'm gonna unmute you now so you can go ahead and ask the question. So you could go ahead. Melissa?
Hello, good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right. And one of my thing is, if I were to use seaweed, and that comes normally on the sea, and we you have to wash it first, because I think you have to wash the salt out of it, and then can I use that, mix it up one time inside the soil, or it has to decompose properly first and use as a manure? cannot be utilized because I don't want to take, because I know the soil, the seed itself will have its saltiness. I can't add it directly, but what do you think? Should it decompose first properly? Also, I recently bought a short dwarf. I don't know, well, it's a short dwarf, but a plant, a lime tree that one should be bare in 1 year. Should I plant it in, would it be better to be planted in the ground, or I could keep it in a big pot and see how it will go? Thank you.
Let's deal with the sargassum part first. We are presently here in St. Kitts as part of our agricultural week. That is one of the main focus on our agricultural week here, the sargassum, because it is now very prevalent within the Caribbean islands, the smaller islands here, from us here right up to Antigua and going back down to St. Lucia and Dominica and so forth. Now, it can be used, but it is that it would need to be washed, meaning you need to use water to reduce the salt content in it. And it's best for you to have it decomposing or decomposed before you add that into your soil. Bear in mind that whatever you add there don't definitely affect the pH of your soil. As much as maybe adding organic nutrient to your soil, it does or it will change the pH of your soil. So you need to be careful with that. But yes, it can be used. In terms of your lime tree, if this is a grafted lime tree, once you've had that plant and you brought it now to your area where you're going to be growing it for the rest of its life, once it has climatized itself, meaning you bring it outside, like accustomed to the sun and the elements out there, and you plant it within the permanent area, just plant it in the ground. Keep it in a pot. What you'll be doing, the length of time you'll have the plant in the pot, it will not be allowing the roots time to develop and to go out to the nutrients in the soil. The only nutrient that it will be allowed or it will be available for will be nutrient within the pot where it is. So that can cause some slow or stunted growth. But if it is that you're going to plant your lime tree in the ground, you will want to add some organic matter to it. You maybe want to put some lime in it, plant your crop, and just leave area you can water it properly. And then you just introducing your plant now to the elements that is now going to be growing in after that. So I hope that kind of clarifies your question.
Thank you so much. Next question, can you use dry leaf or mushroom psyllium to make soil?
Yes, it's organic matter. It's going to decompose and break down. It's going to improve the soil texture and structure. It's going to add nutrient to the soil. And it can function well as a planting medium in terms of your seedling production, or if you're using orchids or other plants or other crops that you'll want to plant. So you can use it as a planting medium also.
Thank you. Wouldn't hot water destroy some of the useful soil organisms?
Organisms, yes, it would.
Organism, yes, sorry.
Yes, organism, yes, it would, but it is minimal, the amount, because the hot water is just basically on the surface. And you're not going to come with a whole fire truck full of hot water. You're going to use a small amount. And hot water is not something you recommend for you to plant in 200 or 300 square foot of land. That is, no, you're talking maybe a small backyard, maybe a 6x6 area where you use a small amount of hot water in there. That would be the recommendation. And it is that once the water cools, you then have microbial activities and other insects and organisms then re-enter in that area. So you'll have that.
Thank you. How often do you conduct soil tests to monitor fertility and organic matter?
It's recommended at least once per year. If you're doing crop rotation, you may want to do it maybe after every 1 or 2 cycles, depending on what crops you're looking at. But it's best recommended once a year, because it is, as we mentioned, a crop rotation. The average crop grows between maybe 2 months and a half to 3 months. It's basically 60 to 90 days, the average crop. So if you're looking at that, you're going to have 3 months per crop, 12 months in a year. So you divide it in 4. So you have at least 3 cycles of crop and a rest period between there. So at least once per year before maybe you start your crop production again, you'll do your soil test. And that will give you an idea of your nutrient content, the amount of air, organic matter, microbial activity, biological activity, and what ecosystem is functioning well within the soil that you have there right now.
Thank you. For farmers growing through crops and managing orchards, such as cocoa and mango? What are the best soil management practice? And how suitable are intercropping or cover cropping? Which crop works best? And how do they help improve soil fertility, moisture, and weed control?
Let's use tree crops. Tree crops, you're looking at a plant minimum at least 1.5 meters. So it gives you at least 1 meter above the ground. Any cover crop that is going to keep moisture in the soil, any of the cover crops that I mentioned before in terms of cantaloupe, squash, pumpkin, cucumbers, that covers that soil. You can then use zero tillage. So once the crop has been harvested, you simply pull the root up, let it dry, and you plant a crop on that crop. That crop is rotten, so it's then going to add organic matter to your soil. You can have soil additives amendments, like in terms of organic matter, be dropping from rabbit, sheep, poultry, any of those small animals, integrate that to your soil. So you can have zero tillage. You can do crop rotation within that same area around the tree crops. So you can have that. So in doing that, you ensure that it is that you're keeping the moisture, you're adding organic matter, you're covering that soil. So you're now harvesting from your tree crops will take you a longer time to harvest, and you have short crops. So it is good for the farmer on an economical perspective. At least within 3 month cycle, he has some form of crop output and economic input coming in. And you also ensure that the soil is healthy in terms of protecting it and adding nutrients to it.
Thank you. With this excess of sargassum seaweed in the region, do you have any DIY system to treat and distribute this in farming?
From my research in Barbados, I know they're using that, some of that they know in terms of in the beauty product industry. For example, here in St. Kitts, it does affect us in terms of the tourism industry because a lot of it comes up on the beach, so we have to collect it from there, take it over to the dump, where they just basically leave it, just rot. And what is it doing when it's rotting? There is now adding a lot of salt to that particular area. If it is you have a small quantity that you can have in your backyard area, and you can spread it thinly and integrate it as part of your composting, yes, you can do that, because the salt in it, sodium in that, does activate some types of the chemical processes that breaks down the organic matter quickly in your compost area. You have that. It should not be done in a large amount, because then you'll be overpowering your pest, and you may put too much salt in it that can cause you to kill your biological activity in your compost. So you don't want to have that. So you can use that sparingly. But for now, it is necessary for treatment prior to it being used in your production or in your garden.
Thank you very much. Melissa has her hand up again, so I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Melissa.
My question is, I know we are encouraging a lot of to use more organic method of manure to our crops, which is much more healthy and one of the best. But as I am understanding, this takes period of time, because I was asking one of my agriculturist personnel from here, and I was referring to it to get and it was this was the 2020s is potassium nitrate and something, and calcium. So I was asking about the banana and the eggshells, which I'd have to wash the eggshell first and then bake it and then crush it up. And he's saying that it will take us a longer, it will release slower. And he said, so therefore you have to put that aside until the next year. You can't use it now. So with manuring, it's a longer process. So unless you're going to talking about the next year crop, because if you're going to do it now, it's not going to be beneficial to the crops. Now, I'm not too sure if it'll be in long term. It's going to be beneficial, but now I don't think it'll be beneficial. But it'd be good for you to have them for the next crop rotation for the next year. I don't know if that makes any sense, or if you could help me do some clarity on top of that, please. I'll be thankful.
I agree with you. organic matter is not an overnight quick fix in terms of your nutrient. It's not. Organic matter improves the soil texture and the soil structure. Whereas simply adding your ammonium sulfate, your NPK, your urea, potash, that particularly almost give you an instant, within a couple of days, you'll see the effect of it. But the instant effect of it is short-lived. That's the challenge. So I often recommend to farmers, if you're going to be planting in a particular area and you're thinking about using more organic matter, incorporate your organic matter into your soil area. Plow it in, till it, whatever you're doing. You plant your crops. What you've done, you've improved the area that your plants are going to be growing in. And as that organic matter decomposes, it releases nutrients that your plants will have access to. It's not going to access it one day or another day. But if you're focusing now on rotation of crops, you're looking at the longevity of your soil, the health of your soil, you will be focusing more, not just only on the one day of the quick fix, but over the length of your crops. Because your crops are going to be growing there. If you're using semi-permanent crops, sorrel, or if you're using a crop which is permanent, your bananas, your coconut crops, you're focusing not only on nutrient being available today, but nutrient being available over the cycle of your crops. So that's where the organic matter comes in, and that's where it becomes necessary. I agree with the recommendation the person made to you in terms of the eggshells and the banana peel and all that kind of stuff. Yes, all that is very good. But again, it is not an instant quick fix as you would get from the urea, NPK, ammonium sulfate, different phosphates and so forth. That's what you're looking at. So you should be focusing, yes, on the longevity and the health and the quality of your soil and your crop than on just getting the instant fix that you'll get from the phosphate chemicals. I hope that kind of responds or clarifies something for you. Hello?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. The next question is, what is your tillage strategy?
Okay, when we say tillage strategy, for what crop, for what area? There are many strategies you can use. Zero tillage, where you don't till at all, where you use your cover crops or you use the residue of your crop in an area.
Sorry to interject, there's a follow-up question to that question, which is after corn harvest, what crop can be replaced in that same bed?
Okay. If you're leaving the stock in the field, cucumbers, string beans, any running vine crop, you can use the corn stalk for them as one of them. If you're taking the corn out, you would want to plant a crop that's going to break up the soil. So you're looking at maybe sweet potato, maybe some turnips, carrots, something like that. If you're going to integrate, meaning that you're going to then go in and plow or turn back in that corn stalk into the soil, you can easily plant a crop like a leafy crop after that. Cabbage, lettuce, broccoli, something in that kind of area. You could do that.
Thank you. What do you think about tires as it relates to soil contamination?
I think persons use tire more as a recycling than more for farming or in cropping. There's a lot of tires out there. So just trying to find a way of reusing them. But we have to be careful because the tires, what they're made of is a byproduct of petroleum. And that does release toxins and chemicals into the soil, not just into the soil, but it can go into the crop that we are now consuming. So we have to be careful with that.
Thank you. What happens if the soil lacks nutrients?
If the soil lack nutrient, your crop just will not go very well. That's it. So you need to ensure that you either seek to improve your soil structure and texture and the nutrient content of your soil, and that also you try to make sure you do some additives to your soil, be it through organic matter, both vegetative and animal. Try to use a cover cropping in there to try to improve the structure and texture and keeping the moisture in your soil.
Thank you. What would you recommend to treat the nematodes?
I think we had that one already. Some said in a small area, the hot water. Some persons use a nematicide, which is more chemical, which is more phosphorus based. You may use it structurally in terms of aerating the soil, breaking up the soil. are biological in terms of integrating pests, using crops that are more root crops, sweet potato and so forth, which are not generally affected by them so much.
Thank you. What is the best product for removing deeply rooted weeds and bush without affecting the quality of the soil?
Some back-breaking pick, digging them out. That's a short version. You can trim the vegetative part of the plant and bury the root. So once the plant kind of photosynthesize, the root eventually will die. So that's what you have. But if you're looking at ensuring that you remove the rooting system, it would require some manual labor, physically manually digging out the root. We'll have that. But in doing that, you'll be turning up the soil. So quite a bit of your topsoil is now going to be turned underneath, and you're losing some of that nutrient from that area.
Okay. The next question is more of a statement followed by a question. Emmanuel have a lot of African snails near her property, and she's been using seaweed to repel them. She's asking if you think that's a good idea.
I've never heard that one, using the seaweed. So we're talking about the brown African snail, the large brown ones.
Yes, please.
I've never heard using the seaweed. I would be interested to know how effective it is for her in terms of doing that. I would suggest to her also she get some if she's from St. Lucia and these other islands, get what we call some local fowl. Them local fowl will be happy to eat them. But I'd be interested to know how effective the use of the seaweed is in terms of either reducing the effect of them or even eliminating them.
All right. So since you recently just answered her question, she has her hand raised, so I'm gonna unmute her so she can speak. You could go ahead.
Hi, sir. Yes, so I figured the salt, usually, what we would do, since I did not want to use chemicals around my farm, I would put salt on every single African snail that I found. So I was like, okay, that's too much salt. So I would just take the seaweed and put it around the plants. And that, I guess, the high salt content in the seaweed would prevent them from crossing over. But I'm not sure what it is doing to my soil.
What you can do, probably collect some of them, a bucket or anything, just throw the seaweed in there because they're gonna need to eat. Now, if you're eating the seaweed, that's gonna increase the salt content in their body. Now, high salt means they're gonna dehydrate, or they should dehydrate. So it'll be good to see how well that works. I know maybe around your garden it's kind of difficult because you have to go and walk around a lot and monitor all of that. But have you found that it has reduced in terms of them passing that barrier and entering to eat your crops and so on?
Yes, I do. They do not eat the seaweed. They just do not cross it.
Okay, salt. Once they touch it,
Yeah,
that salt in there. So I mean, you've now found a very effective use for your sargassum.
I did, but I'm not sure what it is doing to my soil. If it is making it too much, well, too salty, is it destroying the proper chemical
Well,
reactions
if you
in there?
use
I'm
an
not sure.
excessive amount of it, it will definitely affect the pH of your soil. It will definitely affect the amount of salt and sodium that you're now adding to your soil, to your crop area. You have coconut trees around in your garden?
Yes, I do.
Coconut trees are crops. They do very well in terms of salt. Salt actually do very well for them. You see coconut trees on the beach area, they go very, very well. So that's something that maybe you could consider as a crop that can be used where you're concerned about the amount of sargassum that you're adding to that area.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Next question is, what is considered the most effective way to support the tomato plant?
Whatever it is you can afford. Some persons will say we just use bamboo. Some use maybe a pole and just tie a netting across it. Some use actually a trellis string with netting. Some use individual poles for each plant. There are different things you can use. You can go to a point where buy the gun that can just put clip around the plant and clip it onto a piece of wire or something. So it is that you need to ensure whatever you use is not something that's going to damage the skin or the cambium layer of the plant. Because once it damages that, opening up the plant now to fungus and sorry, fungus and bacterial effect, which can definitely affect your plant health.
Does cadmium pose a threat to our crops?
Does cadmium?
Yes, pose as a threat to our crops?
To some part, it's minimal, but as I said, it has to do with you monitoring the effect of it. And depends also at what stage your crop is when you notice or if you see what's happening.
Okay, I see that Melissa have her hand up, so I'm gonna unmute you so you can ask a question, Melissa.
Right again. One of my concerns was that I know from, okay, so I did agriculture in school, and was one of my most enjoyed topics. I remember at one point we used to speak about rotational crops, but I can recall the my teacher at that time told us that if we have a good sized piece of land, so we divide it into 4. If you want, you can burn it. And after burning it and preparing it, it's just like if you're going to cook, you prepare your chicken before you cook it. So you prepare the soil by burning it, and it will add back I can't remember. The ashes does very well with the soil. And after that, then you divide the land into 4 sections, and in each section you plant different crops. And I think I can't remember what cycle, because I have to get back an agriculture book. At some stage, when you do the rotation, then it is like you plant number 1, so you could have plot 1, 2, 3, 4. So number 1 will go at 2, number 2 will go at 3, number 4 will go at 4, and 4 will go at 1. I don't know if that is how you do the crop rotation. That in my head, that is what I recall it. Well, that is what resonates in my head. Also, the young lady who mentioned a while about using that as a barrier for would it use a barrier for snails? Because if you're going to use a barrier for snails, because every time we plant here, we have, no, not snails, slugs. We have a lot of slugs. So if that could be used as a barrier, I go and collect a lot of seaweed and put it around my pots. I put it around my pots to prevent anything from coming in to my thing, and that would be very good for me, because I don't mean I have to come out in the middle of the night, 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Well, that's when they come out to eat. So thank you very much.
Okay, let me address the first part for you, Melissa, about the crop rotation. I too, similar to you, back when in my high school days, a few years, a lot back, they did the same thing. 4 crops, and you just basically go in a circle with them. But what has been noticed over a period of time, and this is through experiment and research, is that as much as we put crops in that cycle that either replaces or depletes nutrient, there must be a point in time where the soil itself must be given a chance to recuperate itself. Even if we add organic matter to it, it must get a chance to recuperate. So what is now more being pushed is more 3 crops instead of 4. So you'll have a time where one point in time where the soil or the area that you're planting would be left fallow, or it will be left uncultivated, it will be left without planting any crops. You won't be messing with it in any shape or form. That's what we have. So it is that you need to ensure that the rotation that you do, as I mentioned before, it is one that either replenishes, or takes, or that allows the soil to be aerated, or the soil to be turned over, the soil to be tilted, to allow the microbial and the biological activity to happen. In terms of the part that you mentioned before about the lady who mentioned before about the sargassum being used, as I said, I don't have much information about it, but I'd be very interested to know how effective it is in terms of using that against the snails.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Next question is from Kellyanne. Is green healthy to eat that grows from your shower waste water?
Is green?
Greens. I'm assuming that she plants vegetables, but the water that is used is from shower wastewater. So she's trying to
Okay.
realize if
That is
that would be
that
helpful.
is excellent. Remember, soil is one of the most effective natural filter we have for wastewater. By the time that shower water comes out, whether you use soap, body wash, whatever you use to shower, and it goes into the soil, by the time that water goes through the soil and is filtered and is taken up in the plant is not taking up your what body wash we have, oil overlay. I don't know what kind of body wash people use. It's not taking that up. The soil has a way of filtering that water, so the plant takes up healthy water in there, and it's excellent for planting your crops in. It's a way of reusing the wastewater, and it's showing that you don't have any soil erosion from the water excessively going off or any nutrient being leached away from it. So you can use that.
Great, thank you very much. What are the effects of using tap water with chlorine to irrigate, cultivated plants?
Ooh, that is very, very the chlorine, if it's not a plant that is either resistant or tolerant to it, it can have a negative effect. It can cause your plant to wilt. It can sometimes even kill the plant. It can cause some root and rot, because once you water the plant and the water stays on the surface, the chlorine doesn't necessarily filter down into the soil. It stays on the surface of the soil, and that can cause that edge around the plant. You can cause it there to rot very easily. They recommend is for you to use rain-fed, so that's water you will catch from maybe we're running off your roof or rain in the bucket or something. That is much better for you to use to water your plants. But you have to be careful with the amount of chlorine in the water when you're using that to water your plants.
Thank you very much. Cassie, have a question. What can be used for woodworm in the plant from the soil up?
What can be used for woodworm?
Yes, in the plant from the soil up.
You can look at from a cultural part in terms of tilling your soil lightly, talking about anywhere between 6 to 8 inches. Simply using a digging fork, a hand fork to turn over your soil, you can have that. You can look at adding ash, as somebody had mentioned, in terms of adding ash to the soil. That can have an effect on it. If you're looking at a larger area, then you'll definitely look at the chemical intervention in terms of using phosphate chemicals in that.
All right, thank you very much. Somebody mentioned that they did their soil test and it turns out to be more acidic than alkaline. And they're asking, can I incorporate the method that you suggest to help the soil? Or is there any other recommendation?
If it's acidic, you need to add alkaline to bring it down. If it's too alkaline, you add more acidic to bring it up. You have lime. We do have some persons. Let me go back first and say, depends on what crop they're planting to decide where to put it. And if it's one that is more on the alkaline level, then yes. If it's one more on the acidic level, a different story. You add lime and there are other additives that you can use. But as I said, once you've done the soil test, the person who you do the soil test with would be able to give you the recommendation in terms of the quantity per area you can add. I want to make sure I point out in here, it is possible to have 1 acre land and you have 5 different tests in that one area and all of them come out different. It is possible. So we need to ensure that we have that. And they'll just find something that's common right across the board that they can recommend to you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Miss Eugene. Because of climate change, is the sun becoming a danger to soil and plants?
Can you repeat that again for me?
Because of climate change, is the sun becoming a danger to the soil and plants?
The soil is a danger to everything that is under it. Soil, plants, us as humans. Too much of exposure to ultraviolet rays can cause, has been linked to skin cancer, melanoma. In terms of the soil, it dries up, so it reduces the amount of moisture in the soil, thus causing degradation of the soil, the loss of soil cover, the heat melt the polar caps. So we have the rise of the sea ocean. We have the loss of freshwater habitats and coastal regions. There's a number of effects that you have on it. So the effect it does have on different area depends on location, depends on condition of those areas.
Thank you very much. Kathy had asked a question with the woodworm in the plants, in which you already answered. But she's now asking what's the best chemical for it to treat the woodworm?
I would not want to go and promote or recommend any chemical in this one. I would not want to do that. I am part of our chemical board here, so I try my best not to promote or do any of those. I try not to do that.
Thank you very much. Jacqueline is asking, do you utilize cover crops?
Yes, I do. I do utilize cover crops. I do zero tillage. I do reduced tillage, and I do a small bit of agroforestry, a bit of that. But cover crops more, we have that in our summertime here. We get anywhere between May, June, right down to as far as the end of September, mainly cover crops in that area. For one, is our hurricane season. Two, temperatures tend to be hotter. So it is from an economical perspective, crops like cucumbers, squash, pumpkin, these are crops that we grow. And because we have access to water, it is from an economical perspective, is one of the most feasible crops to plant. Also, because of the threats of hurricane, it's much more feasible to plant a cover crop than a tree crop, like a sweet pepper or tomato that is standing, where the wind might blow away the flowers or blow off the fruits and so forth.
All right, thank you very much. Next question, can we double up in cover cropping, cover soil with bags, but plants cover crops?
Okay, no, okay, I don't understand. You do a cover crop and you use bags.
I'm assuming such.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a type of bag that we have here. It's called, it's a, we just say is a mashed potato bag. The bag is made of something called sisal. It's an organic bag. We do have them here. Sometimes onion mashed potato comes in them. We do have some persons who use that on the soil. So it covers the soil. They simply cut a hole and plant in it. And they plant a cover crop, which is a running crop on that. We do have some farmers who do that because that in itself, when it breaks down, is organic. It's going to turn into organic matter into the soil. But the fact that it's covering the soil, it does offer some protection from the heat of the sun, drawing out the moisture. So that can be possible if you're using that particular type. If you're going to duplicate it by doing bags and that, if you're using a plastic bag, which is not necessary, you're just incurring additional cost to you for that. Where you just plant your cover crop and allow your cover crop to cover your soil.
Thank you so much. I see that Shari Bramble has her hand up for the longest while, so I'm going to give her permission to speak. Go ahead, Miss Bramble. Miss Bramble? Okay. I will now move on to the next question. How effective is worm casting?
How effective is
Worm casting.
Okay, I'm not sure the question. If the
Well,
person can maybe give some more context to it,
I'm
I would
hoping
appreciate that.
Well, Ruth, if you are on, you could just raise your hand and care to elaborate a little bit more, and I will unmute you. Okay? The next question will be, how often do we fertilize scallions, and is it better to use granular or liquid fertilizer?
If you're planting scallions, it's best to plant it in an organic, rich soil. They thrive very well in that. And because scallions are more leaf than more root based, it's best to use more liquid fertilizer where you're applying it through spraying. Because foliar spray, it's best to apply it that way. Have Ruth sent back anything? Hello?
Hi, no, her hand is not up and she didn't follow it up with a in the
Okay.
box, so hopefully she will. Melissa have her hand up, so I'm gonna give her permission to speak and ask her question.
I know you mentioned a while ago about the chlorine that might have effect on the soil or I mean around the roots of the crops. I think when I asked the question in the previous session before, because of, okay, I have two sets of lands. Where I'm living here, I want to do certain crops here. I haven't started it because I have to do mopping out and so forth. But I have a land where I planted sorrel and peas. And one of my concerns is that I don't have water out there. And I think that is affecting the growth of the sorrel. The peas not so much, because I mean when rain comes, peas are more can withstand harsh weather patterns rather
That's true.
than the right. So when someone told me to use the color thing, Epsom salt and baking soda. I did plant baking soda wrong, but they told me to add Epsom salt, and that should rehydrate it, provide some hydration. I don't know anything about that because I have never used Epsom salt before. With the come back to the chlorine. If you're going to do irrigation, because I want to put in, I want to put a standpipe there, but I want to do an irrigation system, and that is all the water I have. I don't have rain. I don't have a tank. All right, it's not even my land. It's not my land. I'm using someone else's land to give me permission to plant on their land. So I can't go and hoist up a big tank and so forth. So I'm going to think about using the same pipe water that we're using that we have chlorine, and I won't detect when chlorine will be coming and going, because it will always be inside of our water to filter, to purify it for us. And something else I wanted to ask, but when I remembered, I'll just put my hands up and ask a question.
What I would suggest to you in terms of the water, now the same way you're going to have a hose to water your plant. What I would suggest, if you leave the water, the same water you're going to use, let's say in a bucket or in a barrel or something for a few days, open to the sun, the amount of chlorine from it is going to dissipate. So it'll be healthy to use that in terms of watering your plant. So that's not a problem at all. I just say you really don't you don't presently have access to it. So it is that it's just for you to find ways of utilizing or collecting or storing water so you can use it sometime later on. It's just for you to use that. Just want to respond to something somebody said about the worm casting. Yes, it's high in is a high nutrient content, and you can use that in your plant. I think it was, I don't remember who the name was, they spoke about worm casting, about using that in your garden or something. So yes, you can do that. It's high in nutrient, is rich in nutrients.
Thank you very much. The last question we have is from J.K. Joseph. So I'm gonna unmute you before I let Melissa speak. Melissa will be our last question for the night. So, okay, I'm seeing that J.K. Joseph put down her hand. So, Melissa, by all means, you can unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay, and then after Melissa, we'll deal with J.K. Joseph. So, Melissa, you could go ahead, please.
Okay,
Melissa?
Melissa, are you hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Excellent. You could go ahead, please.
Okay, so I have a couple of friends who are in agriculture, and one of the things is I noticed when I go and visit their crop site that they use this. I believe the same thing is this black tar. It's like a tarpaulin, but it's more biodegradable, and they use it as a part of to kill the weeds, to take control of weeds because of the manual labor and where it is. And also, again, we may say the soil, reduces the exposure from the sun.
Yes, that is weed block.
Right. So when you use that cover crops, it's because how do you get the water in? Because my thing, you have to water the plants.
If you're using the weed block, if you're going to use the weed block, there's presently here, there's two types.
Weed block, you said?
Weed block. It's a plastic.
Yeah.
There's a thick woven type and there's like a film plastic type.
Okay.
Either one, if you're using either one, simply by using, you cover the soil with it, you make a T in it, you open it, plant your plant in it, you close it back. That's it. Now, when
Okay.
you're applying water, that's one thing that in my presentation earlier, in terms of the efficiency use of water, you're using something, you use drip irrigation, where the water drips directly to the plant root. So right where the opening is in that weed block, your irrigation line or your drip line is right there, so the water goes directly straight to the plant root, so you can use that. At the same time, it helps to, the weed block itself helps to suppress the weed growth. That's what you'll be having.
Okay. Another thing too, I know, okay, so I think in a particular year, I'm observing that our hurricane season begins from July to, I think it's late on November, if I'm subject to correction.
Yes.
I think that is, so therefore you're telling, would you encourage, not telling me, or would you be encourage us or me to plant our crops or different type of crops around our weather or our weather patterns? Because if you're going to have like certain trees that grows on certain things, you won't want that because hurricane again. And then you're talking about flooding. If you're on a flat place and the water is not draining off, you're talking about flooding. So having your cucumbers and so forth. So it is advisable to plant your crops in accordance with your weather pattern. And that will be my last statement.
Which country are you at?
St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay, so you have mountain, you have open areas. Are you planting in a flat area, in an incline, or where?
Oh no, I have an incline land, and also I have where I'm here now. I'm going to do greenhouse because of I want to try the flowers, the edible flowers. I want
Okay.
to do edible flowers and some microcrop in the back.
Okay. Definitely you have to consider the climatic conditions, regardless of whichever country or where you're located. But it is that knowing the weather pattern in that particular area, you use that to mitigate what crops you plant and when you plant. If you know you're in an open area and you know that's normally the direction where the hurricane is going to be coming, it would not be feasible to just say, okay, I'm going to plant some nice sweet peppers and tomatoes, standing crops that the wind are going to blow down. So you'll be looking at, when you're getting into the opening part of the hurricane season, you should be either wrapping up your more tree crops area, more get into your cover crops area. And as you're getting down to the ending part, you can then be reintroducing your tree crops. That's what you're looking at. So you would need to, whoever it is, would need to make an assessment of your area and know the weather pattern in that area and then make a decision from there.
Yes, but also if you're saying that, then you'll be mentioning again about replenishing, because if I just take out the crop that is is not really gonna benefit from the I taking out the crop after that set of crops in the hurricane season, then I mean I have to leave that land left alone unless I plant sweet potato or some other ground crops, ground crop. Or like,
I think you just answered your very same question, because what you've already given me here, you've already given me your scenario of how you can mitigate, ensuring you have your production right through the year and considering the hurricane effects of you may have. So you can do just that.
all right, thank you so much.
You're welcome, ma'am.
I know it because I know Mr. Razam Shalom brother taught me very well, and I got awarded for
Okay.
science. So, you know,
Okay.
but I was just making sure that, you know, a lot of things have changed. I have not been in that field because I'm a nursing assistant, I'm a social worker, and I'm now going to get into occupational hygiene. So it's just not, I haven't been in that field for quite a while, but I still do remember a lot.
Yes, very good.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you so much. And the last question will be from J.K. Joseph. I'm going to unmute you now so you can ask your question.
No, sorry.
No problem, Melissa. So GK, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question, please.
Good night.
Good
Hi,
night.
good evening.
My question is, you spoke about using the hot water in the soil. My question is, what are the effects of the hot water? Because I know that it would also damage some of the soil organisms as well as more. And when it comes to using plastic mulch to cover the soil, I know of some farmers that use cardboard from the cardboard box. What are the effects of the cardboard when it breaks down and enter the soil?
Okay, let's deal with the hot water first. Now, the hot water will be a suggestion you'd make for a small area. It's not one that you're going to use if you're preparing, let's say, 5,000 square feet or maybe even more than that. Something less than that you can, because it's a small amount of hot water. Now, the hot water itself does affect the microbials and the microbial activities in the surface, mean like between 3 to 6 inches of soil. You put hot water in this, by the time it gets down past 6 inches, the water's already cool. So it wouldn't do much effect in there. So you're just trying to mitigate any negative you might have in that shallow area there. So it's not something you use in a large area. If you just want to reduce the amount of chemicals you're using in your little backyard garden and so forth, or maybe that's in a few pots that you have around your patio, you can do that, as you're looking at. In terms of the use of plastics, yes, we do have some farmers who use the plastic and the ground cover as a mulch, as we call it. It helps in keeping moisture in your soil, but it also helps in terms of weed suppression. So we do have quite a bit of farmers who use that. In the use of the cardboard, because it also covers the surface, it does reduce and it does offer some weed suppression. But the cardboard, because it's paper, it's organic. When it breaks down, it does add organic nutrient to the soil also. It takes a while to break down, depends on the type of paper it is, but it does offer some form of nutrient, or add nutrient to the soil when that breaks down. Okay, so I hope that's answered your question.
It's all right. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right, so that concludes our Q&A segment, and the poll is now going to be closed. I just want to thank you, Mr. Bell, so much for such an insightful session tonight. It was very informative, and it did bring some more clarity to how we manage our soil health. So I just want to thank you so much for tonight, as well as thank you those who attend tonight's session as well.